December 1945. Nuremberg, Germany. The city did not look like a city. It looked like the picked-over carcass of a leviathan. Marek stood on the corner of Furtherstrasse. The collar of his stolen Wehrmacht greatcoat turned up against the biting wind. The coat had no insignia. He had ripped the eagle off with his teeth 2 weeks ago. But the wool was thick, and the previous owner certainly didn't need it anymore. The air in Nuremberg had a specific taste. It didn't taste like winter. It tasted of wet ash, pulverized brick, and something sweeter, something cloying that rose from the basements where bodies still lay undiscovered beneath tons of rubble. An American Jeep rolled past, tires crunching on the shattered glass that paved every street. The GIs inside were laughing. One of them was smoking a Lucky Strike, the cherry glowing bright in the gray twilight. They looked healthy. They looked fed. They looked like they were on a sightseeing tour of hell. Marek watched them with eyes that felt like dry stones in his skull. He was 22 years old. He looked 40. He put his hand in his pocket and fingered the small, folded piece of paper. It was a fake ID. Name, Janek. Nationality, Polish. Profession, baker's assistant. The war is over, the American said. Go home. Home. Marek almost laughed, but his throat was too dry. Home was a smoking crater in Warsaw. Home was a chimney in Treblinka. Home was a word that had no meaning anymore. He wasn't going home. He was going to work. The cellar. 2 nights earlier, the meeting had taken place in the basement of a half-destroyed villa on the outskirts of the city. The windows were covered with heavy blankets. A single kerosene lamp threw long, dancing shadows against the peeling wallpaper. There were 5 of them in the room. Young men and women with the eyes of wolves. They were Nacum, the Avengers. Plan A is dead, the man at the head of the table said. His voice was a low rumble. This was Yitzhak. He wasn't the supreme leader. Abba was gone, arrested by the British, but he was the anchor here in Germany. The room was silent. Plan A had been the big idea. To poison the water supply of Munich, Berlin, Weimar, Hamburg, and Nuremberg. To kill 6 million Germans for the 6 million Jews. A biblical retribution. An eye for an eye, a mountain of corpses for a mountain of corpses. But the poison hadn't arrived in time. The British had sniffed them out. The dream of the apocalypse was over. So we go home? A girl named Rivka asked. She was cleaning a fingernail with a jagged piece of metal. She had lost her entire family in the Vilna ghetto. No, Yitzhak said. He slammed a heavy fist onto the table. We do not leave while they are still fat, while they still breathe. He pulled a map out of his jacket. He smoothed it out on the table. It showed the American zone of occupation. Plan B, Yitzhak said. He pointed to a location just outside Nuremberg.
Stalag 13D.
The Langwasser internment camp. The Americans are holding them there, Yitzhak explained. 12,000 of them. Not conscripts. Not regular Wehrmacht who were just following orders. These are the SS. The Waffen-SS. The camp guards. The Einsatzgruppen. The true believers. Marek leaned forward. The hatred in his chest, usually a cold, hard knot, began to burn hot. They play soccer, Yitzhak spat. They receive Red Cross packages. They write letters to their wives. The Americans treat them like prisoners of war. They are not prisoners. They are monsters waiting for the world to forget. How do we get them? Marek asked. The Americans guard the perimeter with machine guns. We can't storm the camp. We don't storm it, Yitzhak said. A grim smile touched his lips. We feed them. He tapped a spot on the map, a few kilometers from the camp. The Konsumgenossenschaftsbäckerei, he said. The bakery. It has the contract to supply the camp. Every morning, 10,000 loaves of black bread go from those ovens to the SS tables. Marek looked at the map. He looked at the bakery. We need a man inside, Yitzhak said. Someone who speaks German but can pass as a Pole. Someone who knows how to work hard. Someone who can become invisible. Marek stood up. He didn't hesitate. My uncle owned a bakery in Lodz, he lied. He had never baked a loaf of bread in his life. He had been a student of literature before the world ended. I know the work. Yitzhak looked at him. He saw the hollowness in Marek's cheeks. He saw the shaking hands that he hid in his pockets. It is not about baking, Marek, Yitzhak said softly. It is about waiting. You might have to work for weeks, months. You will be surrounded by Germans. You will have to say, Jol. You will have to be a slave again. Can you do that? Marek thought of the selection ramp. He thought of the officer who had pointed his mother to the left and him to the right. He remembered the officer's white gloves. I can be anything, Marek said. The interview. The bakery was a fortress of brick and soot. Even from the street, it smelled of yeast and sourdough. A smell that made Marek's stomach cramp with hunger. He walked into the office. It was warm. The heat from the massive industrial ovens radiated through the walls. The manager was a man named Herr Schimmel. He was a quintessential German bureaucrat. Round glasses, a ledger on his desk, and a face that looked like it was made of uncooked dough. Janek! Schimmel read the papers, peering over his spectacles. Polish. Yes, her manager, Marek said. He kept his head down. He rounded his shoulders. He adopted the posture of the defeated. We have had Poles here before, Schimmel grunted. Lazy. Stealing flour. Can you work? Or are you looking for a warm place to sleep? I work, Marek said in broken German. I work hard. I need eat. Schimmel looked him up and down. The bakery was desperate. The war had killed all the able-bodied German men. The only ones left were old men, cripples, and women. They needed muscle to haul the flour sacks. They needed bodies to shovel the coal. You start tonight, Schimmel said, stamping the paper. Night shift. We bake for the camp. It is heavy work. If I catch you eating the dough, I call the MPs. Understand? Yes. Thank you. Thank you, her manager. Marek backed out of the room, bowing slightly. As soon as he was in the hallway, he straightened his back. A pulse pounded in his neck. He was in the night shift. The bakery floor was a cavern. It was industrial warfare applied to food. Massive mixing vats churned hundreds of kilos of gray, sticky dough. Conveyor belts rattled. The ovens were long, black tunnels that roared with fire. Marek was given a white apron and a shovel. You, the shift foreman, a one-armed veteran named Gruber, barked. Coal. Keep the fires hot. If the temperature drops, the bread is ruined, and I will kick your Polish ass.
Marek shoveled.
The heat was suffocating. Sweat ran down his back, soaking into the wool of his trousers. The coal dust coated his throat. Shovel. Lift. Throw. Shovel. Lift. Throw. He worked like a machine. He didn't look at the other workers. He didn't speak. Around 3 a.m., the first batch came out. Thousands of loaves. Dark, dense German Kriegsbrot. It wasn't good bread, it was made of rye, potato flour, and sawdust, but it was food. Marek watched as the loaves were stacked onto wooden carts. For the Kameraden, Gruber muttered, patting a loaf. He looked at Marek. You know who eats this, Polak? Marek leaned on his shovel, wiping soot from his forehead. No, boss. The SS, Gruber said, a glimmer of pride in his eyes. Our boys. The Americans lock them up, but we feed them. We keep them strong. Marek felt the blood drain from his face. He gripped the handle of the shovel so hard his knuckles turned white. That is good, Marek said, forcing a dull, stupid smile. Good they eat. Gruber laughed. You're a simpleton, aren't you? Just keep shoveling. Marek turned back to the fire. He stared into the flames. Eat, he thought. Eat and get fat. I want you healthy. The waiting game. Weeks passed. January turned to February. The winter was brutal. Nuremberg was buried under snow that turned gray with soot within hours. Marek, now Janek to everyone, became a fixture at the bakery. He was the first to arrive and the last to leave. He volunteered for the worst jobs. He cleaned the vats. He scrubbed the floors. He carried 50-kilo sacks of flour until his spine felt like it would snap. He became invisible. To Schimmel and Gruber, he was just a tool, pair of hands. A good Pole. They stopped watching him. They stopped checking his pockets. Every morning, when his shift ended, Marek walked back to the ruins. He met Yitzhak in the cellar. "Is it time?" Marek would ask. "Not yet," Yitzhak would say. "The medicine is coming." They didn't call it poison. They called it the medicine. The cure for the disease that was the Third Reich. Marek was rotting from the inside. Every night he watched the bread go out. He calculated the numbers. 10,000 loaves. For men to a loaf. 40,000 meals. He imagined the SS officers in the camp. He imagined them slicing the bread, spreading margarine on it, laughing about the Jews they had gassed. "I can't take it," Marek told Yitzhak one night in March. "I am feeding them. I am keeping them alive. Every day I work there, I am a collaborator." Yitzhak grabbed him by the shoulders. His grip was like iron. "You are not a collaborator," Yitzhak hissed. "You are the angel of death. But the angel must be patient. If you strike too soon, you kill 10, 20. We want them all. We want the silence of the graveyard. Where is the arsenic?"
Marek demanded.
"It is in Paris," Yitzhak said. "Our courier is bringing it. It is difficult. The borders are tight. The Americans are watching. The breach." In late March, something changed at the bakery. One of the regular German bakers, an old man named Muller who managed the mixing vats, fell ill. Pneumonia. Gruber was cursing, pacing the floor. "I need a mixer. I can't put a novice on the vats. The ratio must be perfect." He looked around the floor. He saw the cripples. He saw the exhausted women. Then he saw Marek. Marek was sweeping flour in the corner, head down. "Yannick!" Gruber yelled. Marek ran over.
"Yeah, boss."
"You've been watching Muller, haven't you? You've been cleaning his vats for 3 months." "I watch," Marek nodded. "Can you run the mixer? Do you know the water levels?" This was it. The moment. The coal shoveler was just a laborer. The mixer controlled the dough. The mixer controlled the ingredients.
Marek swallowed.
He looked at the massive metal vat, the beating heart of the bakery. "I can try," Marek said. "Don't try. Do. If you ruin the batch, I'll kill you." Marek climbed the metal ladder to the platform above the vats. He looked down into the swirling gray mass of flour and water. He was now in control of the food supply for 12,000 SS officers. He worked the shift. He was meticulous. He measured the water perfectly. He timed the mixing blades. The dough came out perfect. Gruber tasted a piece of the raw dough. He nodded. "Not bad for a Polak," he grunted. "You stay on the vats until Muller comes back." Marek walked home that morning in a daze. The sun was rising over the ruins of Nuremberg, painting the shattered skyline in hues of blood orange. He went straight to the safe house. "I am on the mixers," he told Yitzhak. Yitzhak's eyes lit up. He went to a loose floorboard in the corner of the room. He pried it open. He pulled out a heavy canvas bag. "It arrived last night," Yitzhak whispered. He opened the bag. Inside were 4 large glass jars. They were filled with a fine, grayish powder. It looked exactly like flour. Arsenic.
Pure, concentrated arsenic.
Enough to kill the population of a small city. "There is a problem," Marek said, looking at the jars. "I can't dump this in the vats." "Why?" "The vats are too big. If I pour it in, it will dilute. Some loaves will be deadly, some will be harmless. And the smell. Wet arsenic smells like almonds. Gruber will smell it the moment the water hits the flour." Yitzhak frowned. So we don't put it in the dough," Marek said. His mind was racing, visualizing the bakery floor. "We put it on the bread." "Explain." "The glaze," Marek said. "Before the loaves go into the cooling racks, we brush them with water to make the crust shine. We mix the arsenic into the water. We paint it on the bottom of the loaves. The crust will soak it up. It will be concentrated. 1 bite, and they are dead." Yitzhak nodded slowly. "Paint it on. Like art." "Yes," Marek said. "But I can't do it alone. The brushing happens at the end of the line. I am on the mixers at the start. I need help. I need to get 2 more of us inside. That is risky, Yitzhak warned. We have to, Marek said. 1 man to mix the special water. 1 man to distract Gruber. 1 man to paint. And we have to do it on a Saturday night. Why Saturday? Because on Sunday mornings, Marek said, a cold smile touching his lips. The guards like to sleep in. They eat a late breakfast. By the time the first man falls clutching his throat, the rest will have already finished their meal. Yitzhak closed the bag. He handed a small sample of the powder to Marek. Test it, Yitzhak said. Make sure it dissolves. Marek took the jar. It was heavy. It felt like holding a condensed star, small, but infinitely powerful. He walked back out into the cold morning. He hid the jar inside his coat, right next to his heart. The waiting was over. The baking was about to begin. April 10th, 1946. 3 days before X-Day. The plan required ghosts, and Marek knew exactly where to find them. Her Schimmel was complaining about the absenteeism. The flu was sweeping through the German workers like a scythe. Lazy swine, Schimmel shouted, slamming his ledger. 3 more out today. How am I supposed to meet the quota for the camp? The Americans will fine me if the bread is late. Marek stood in the doorway, cap in hand. He waited for Schimmel to take a breath. Her manager, Marek said softly. I have cousins from Poland. They are here in the displaced persons camp. Strong boys. They need work. They don't get sick. Schimmel looked at him suspiciously. More Poles? I don't run a refugee center, Yannick. They work for food, Marek said. Half wage, cash, no papers. Schimmel's eyes lit up. Half wage meant more money in his own pocket. The black market in Nuremberg was expensive, and Schimmel liked his schnapps. Bring them tonight, Schimmel grunted. But if they steal so much as a crumb, I turn you all over to the MPs. That night, 2 men walked into the Konsum bakery. One was Liebke, a small, wiry man with hands that looked like tree roots. He had survived Auschwitz by working in the Sonderkommando, hauling bodies from the gas chambers to the ovens. His eyes were voids. He had seen the end of the world and found it boring. The other was Haim, a tall, broad-shouldered man who used to be a chemist in Warsaw. He carried a heavy leather satchel. This is Yannick's family. Gruber, the foreman, sneered as he inspected them. He poked Haim in the chest. You look strong. You're on the flour hall. And you, he pointed to Liebke, you look like a rat. You clean the pans. Liebke didn't flinch. He just nodded. Jol boss. The stash. The bakery had a blind spot. Above the main oven room, there was a storage loft used for empty flour sacks and broken equipment. It was dusty, dark, and infested with mice. Gruber never went up there. He had a bad leg and couldn't climb the steep wooden ladder. This was their base of operations. During the break on Thursday night, while the German workers were outside smoking cigarettes, Marek and Haim climbed the ladder. Haim opened his satchel. Inside were 3 heavy glass bottles wrapped in wool rags. They didn't contain schnapps. They contained a thick, gray sludge. I mixed it, Haim whispered. Arsenic, water, and a little glue. It has the consistency of paint. It will stick to the crust and dry invisible. Does it smell? Marek asked. Haim unscrewed the cap of one bottle. A faint, sweet scent wafted out. Metallic almonds. Only if you put your nose in it, Haim said. But once it bakes onto the hot bread, the smell will vanish. Marek pried up a loose floorboard in the corner of the loft, behind a stack of moldy canvas sacks. They carefully lowered the bottles into the crawlspace between the joists. Clink. One bottle touched a nail. They both froze. Downstairs, the heavy iron door of the oven room slammed shut. Yannick, where are you? Gruber's voice roared up the shaft. Marek slammed the floorboard down. He kicked a sack over it. Coming, boss, he yelled down. Fixing the belt. He looked at Haim. They were sweating, but it wasn't from the heat. Saturday, Marek whispered. We unleash it on Saturday. April 13th, 1946. Saturday night. The moon was full. illuminating the ruins of Nuremberg in a spectral white light. It was Passover. For the Jews of Nahum it was fitting. The angel of death was passing over the houses of the innocent and landing squarely on the houses of the Egyptians. Only this time the Egyptians were the SS, and the plague wasn't frogs or blood. It was chemistry. The shift began at 10 p.m. The bakery was running at full capacity. The air was thick with flour dust, swirling like fog in the yellow electric light. The noise was deafening. The rattle of the conveyor belts, the roar of the furnaces, the shouting of men. Marek was at the mixers. He worked rhythmically, his eyes darting to the clock on the wall. 11 p.m. The first batch of dough was mixed.
12 Uhr AM.
The dough was rising in the proofing troughs.
1 Uhr AM.
The loaves were shaped and pushed into the ovens. Everything was normal. Gruber was in his office, drinking coffee and reading a newspaper. The German workers were lethargic, waiting for the shift to end.
2 Uhr AM.
The first batch of 3,000 loaves came out of the ovens. They were dumped onto the cooling racks, massive wooden shelves on wheels. Usually, the bread would sit there until morning, when the trucks arrived. This was the window. Marek caught Liepke's eye across the room. Liepke nodded. Liepke walked over to the main fuse box on the far wall. He held a metal bucket of dirty water and a mop. He pretended to stumble. Splash. The water hit the fuse box. Sparks flew. A loud pop echoed through the hall. Half the lights in the bakery died. The conveyor belt ground to a halt. "Skies!" Gruber yelled, running out of his office. "What happened? You idiots!" "The breaker!" Liepke shouted, playing the fool. "I slipped. I'm sorry, boss." "Fix it!" Gruber screamed. "Get the electrician. The belt is stuck." Chaos. The German workers ran to the fuse box. Gruber was distracted, screaming insults at Liepke. Marek and Heim moved. They didn't run. They walked briskly to the cooling racks in the shadows of the loading bay. The lights there were out. It was dark. Marek grabbed the ladder. He scrambled up to the loft. He ripped up the floorboard. He grabbed the bottles. He slid down the ladder. Heim was waiting with brushes. Ordinary paint brushes they had smuggled in their boots.
Go, Marek hissed.
"I'll watch the door." Heim and Liepke, who had slipped away from the chaos, took the bottles. They went to the racks of black bread. They worked with terrifying speed. Dip the brush. Swipe the bottom of the loaf. Dip, swipe, dip, swipe. The gray sludge was painted onto the underbelly of each loaf. The bread was still warm. The heat sucked the moisture out of the poison, drying it instantly into the crust. It became invisible. Marek stood by the door, pretending to stack crates. His heart was hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. He watched Gruber in the distance, illuminated by the sparks from the fuse box. 100 loaves. 200. 500. The smell. Marek sniffed the air. The metallic almond scent was rising. It was mixing with the smell of yeast and coal smoke. But it was there. Distinct. Sharp. If Gruber came over here... "Hey!" Marek spun around. A German worker, a young boy named Hans, was standing 10 feet away. He was holding a flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, landing on Heim's back. Heim froze, a brush in his hand, hovering over a loaf. "What are you doing?" Hans asked. He stepped closer. "Why are you painting the bread?" Marek didn't think. He didn't hesitate. He stepped out of the shadows. "Hans," Marek said. Hans turned the light on Marek. "Janek? What is that smell? Is that varnish?" "We are fixing the cracks," Marek lied, moving closer. "The boss said the crusts are too dry. Special glaze." "Gruber didn't say anything about glaze," Hans said suspiciously. He moved the light back to Heim. "That doesn't look like glaze. That looks like..."
Hans sniffed.
"That smells like rat poison." The boy's eyes went wide. He opened his mouth to shout for Gruber.
Marek lunged.
He tackled Hans into a stack of empty flour sacks. The flashlight spun away, the beam dancing crazily on the ceiling. Marek clamped his hand over Hans's mouth. They rolled on the floor. Hans was young, but he was wiry. He kicked and scratched. Heim, keep painting, Marek hissed over his shoulder. He tightened his grip on the boy. He looked into Hans's eyes. He saw fear. He saw a boy who just wanted to go home. But Marek saw something else. He saw the faces of the SS men in the camp. He saw the 12,000 monsters who would eat breakfast tomorrow. It's him or them, a voice whispered.
Marek squeezed.
He pressed his thumb into the carotid artery.
Hans thrashed.
His heels drummed on the floor. Then, slowly, the thrashing stopped. His eyes rolled back. He went limp. Marek didn't kill him. He just choked him out. Unconscious, Marek dragged the boy's body behind the stack of sacks. He threw a canvas tarp over him. He stood up, panting, wiping sweat from his eyes. How many? He rasped to Heim. 2,000, Heim whispered, his hand a blur of motion. Almost done. Hurry, the lights are coming back. Across the hall, the electrician had arrived. The sparks stopped. The main overhead lights flickered, buzzed, and then, clack, blazed back to life. The loading bay was suddenly flooded with light. Heim dropped the brush into the bucket. He threw a towel over the open bottle of arsenic. Hey, you three! It was Gruber. He was limping toward them, his face red with rage. Why are you standing there? The belt is moving. Get back to the mixers. Marek stepped in front of the cooling racks, blocking Gruber's view of the painted loaves. We were checking the racks, boss, Marek said, trying to keep his voice steady, making sure they didn't roll during the blackout. Gruber stopped a few feet away. He sniffed. He frowned. What is that smell? Gruber asked. Smells like cleaning fluid. Marek's heart stopped. Liebk spilled the bucket, Marek said quickly. When he fell, it was bleach water. Gruber looked at Liebk. He looked at the puddle on the floor by the fuse box, which was actually water, but close enough. Idiots, Gruber muttered. Clumsy Polish idiots. He looked at the bread. Rows and rows of dark, heavy loaves. Is the bread okay? Yes, boss, Marek said. Perfect. Gruber reached out. He picked up a loaf. Marek stopped breathing. If he turned it over, if he looked at the bottom, Gruber held the loaf. He squeezed it to check the crust. He didn't turn it over. He tossed it back onto the rack. Load it up, Gruber ordered. The trucks are here. The Kameraden are hungry.
3:30 am.
The delivery. Marek, Heim, and Liebk loaded the carts. They pushed the racks out to the loading dock. The American military trucks were waiting, engines idling, exhaust pluming in the cold night air. The drivers were GIs. They didn't care about the bread. They just wanted to finish their run. Marek handed the crates up to the soldiers. 1 crate, death. 2 crates, death. 3 crates, death. 3,000 poisoned loaves. Enough to kill the entire camp 3 times over if the dosage was right. The truck doors slammed shut. The engines revved. Marek stood on the loading dock, watching the taillights fade into the darkness, heading towards Stalag 13D. He felt a hand on his shoulder. It was Heim. It is done, Heim whispered. Marek looked at his hands. They were covered in flour, and under his fingernails, a tiny trace of gray sludge. He didn't feel like an angel. He felt like a ghost. Inside the bakery, behind the flour sacks, the young German boy, Hans, groaned and began to stir. Marek turned back to the warmth of the ovens. Not yet, Marek said. Now we wait for breakfast. April 14th, 1946.
7:30 am.
Stalag 13D, l'Angoissé.
The sun rose over the internment camp, burning off the morning mist that clung to the barbed wire fences. It was a beautiful spring morning. The birds were singing in the trees beyond the perimeter. Trees that the prisoners could see but not touch. Inside Barracks 4, the mood was relaxed. It was Sunday. No work details. No roll call until noon. Sturmbannführer Kurt Muller sat on the edge of his bunk. He was rubbing his feet. The boots the Americans gave them were cheap and ill-fitting, nothing like the polished leather jackboots he had worn in Paris in 1940. Breakfast! a voice shouted from the corridor. The food crates were carried in by fellow prisoners. The smell of chicory coffee and fresh bread filled the stale air of the barracks. Muller stood up. His stomach growled. The rations had been meager lately, but today the crates looked full. "Black bread again," muttered his bunkmate, a former Gestapo officer named Voss. "I would kill for a white roll with butter." "Stop complaining," Muller said, grabbing his tin plate. "It's food. Be grateful the Amos feed us at all. In the Russian camps, they are eating their own boots." They lined up. The bread was sliced thick. Dark, dense rye crust, soft gray interior. Muller took 2 slices. He spread a thin layer of margarine on them. He sat down at the wooden table. He took a bite. The bread was chewy, slightly sour, with the earthy taste of potato flour. He chewed slowly, savoring it. He didn't taste the arsenic. He didn't taste the hate. He just tasted survival. "Not bad," Voss said, chewing enthusiastically. "Fresh. The crust is a bit gritty," Muller noted, picking a speck from his teeth. He took a sip of hot coffee to wash it down. All around the camp, in 12 different barracks, thousands of men were doing the same thing. They were laughing, trading cigarettes, writing letters home. They were the elite of the Third Reich, the men who had burned Europe to the ground. And now they were eating their judgment.
8:15 a.m.
The bakery. Marek stood in the alley behind the bakery. He was shaking. He had finished his shift. He had clocked out. He had walked past Schimmel, who was complaining about the electric bill. He had walked past the spot where they had hidden Hans, the unconscious German boy. Hans was still breathing. They had tied him up and gagged him, leaving him deep in the storage loft behind the sacks. He wouldn't be found for hours. By then, it wouldn't matter. "We have to go," Heim whispered. He was standing by a rusted bicycle. "Now, before the sirens start." "Did they eat it?" Marek asked, staring in the direction of the camp. "Do you think they ate it?" "They are hungry," Liebk said, lighting a cigarette with trembling hands. "Rats always eat." They split up. It was safer that way. "Meet in Prague," Yitzhak had said. "If you survive, meet at the old synagogue." Marek pulled his coat tight. He walked toward the train station. He felt light, untethered. He had no weapon. He had no poison left. He was just a man walking away from a crime scene that stretched for miles.
9 Uhr a.m.
Stalag 13D.
The first sign was not a scream. It was a sound much more guttural. Retching. In Barracks 4, Voss dropped his coffee cup. It shattered on the floor. "Kurt!" Voss gasped. He was clutching his stomach. His face had turned a sickly shade of gray-green. "My gut!" Muller looked up from his letter. "What is it? The coffee? It burns!" Voss screamed. He doubled over, falling to his knees. He vomited violently. A black, bile-filled torrent that splashed onto Muller's boots. Muller stood up, alarmed. "Medic! We need a—" Then it hit him. It felt like someone had shoved a hot poker into his intestines and twisted it. A sharp, blinding cramp that stole the breath from his lungs. Muller grabbed the table. His vision swam. Sweat popped out on his forehead instantly, cold and clammy. "My stomach!" Someone else moaned from the bunk above. Then another, and another. Within minutes, the barracks turned into a scene from Dante's Inferno. Men were rolling on the floor, clutching their bellies. Men were vomiting blood. Men were clawing at their throats, gasping for air as their throats constricted. The sound was horrifying. A chorus of groans, retching, and screams of agony echoing off the wooden walls. "Poison!" Muller wheezed, falling to the floor next to Voss. "We are poisoned."
9:30 a.m.
The alarm. Major William Thompson, the American camp commander, was drinking his Sunday coffee in the administration building when the phone rang. "Sir, you need to get down here." It was the MP at the inner gate. "They're dropping like flies, sir." "Who?" "The guards." "No, sir. The prisoners." "It's Jesus Christ, sir. It's all of them." Thompson ran to the window. He looked out over the camp. It was chaos. Prisoners were stumbling out of the barracks, collapsing in the dirt. Some were convulsing in seizures. Others were lying still, their bodies contorted in rigor. The American MPs were backing away, terrified. They pulled their handkerchiefs over their faces. "Is it typhus?" a lieutenant asked, pale-faced. "Cholera? Cholera doesn't happen in 10 minutes, Thompson snapped. He grabbed his helmet. "Get the doctors. Get every medic in Nuremberg. And lock down the perimeter. No one in, no one out." Thompson ran into the camp. The smell hit him first, the stench of vomit and excrement. He grabbed a German doctor, a prisoner named Dr. Weiss, who was trying to help a convulsing officer. "What is this?" Thompson screamed. "Intoxication," Weiss yelled back, his hands covered in slime. "Acute intoxication. Look at the symptoms. The burning throat, the paralysis. It is arsenic. Arsenic." Thompson froze. "Where? How?" Weiss pointed to the table where the breakfast remains lay scattered. "The bread."
Weiss screamed.
"It's the bread. Don't let them eat the bread."
10 Uhr AM.
The city. The sirens began to wail. Marek was sitting on a bench at the Nuremberg Hauptbahnhof, waiting for a train to Munich. He heard them. Whoa! The sound rose over the city, bouncing off the ruins. American military police jeeps tore through the streets, lights flashing. "Achtung! Achtung!" Loudspeakers blared. "All medical personnel report to Stalag 13D immediately. Emergency!" Marek closed his eyes. He listened to the sirens. To him, it wasn't a warning. It was music. It was the Kaddish for the SS, played by their own captors. A woman sitting next to him on the bench clutched her rosary. "What is happening?" she asked fearfully. "Is the war back?" Marek opened his eyes. He looked at her. "No," he said softly. "Just the bill coming due. The hospital from hell." Inside the camp, the Americans were overwhelmed. They didn't have enough stretchers. They didn't have enough stomachs pumps. They turned the parade ground into a triage center. Thousands of SS men lay in rows on the dirt. They were stripped to the waist, their skin pale and sweaty. Doctors moved among them with buckets of saline solution and charcoal. "Drink this," an American medic shouted, forcing a tube down Muller's throat. Muller gagged. He felt the tube snake into his burning stomach. Then the pump started. He vomited charcoal and blood onto the grass. He was crying, not from sorrow but from pure animal pain. He looked to his left. Voss was lying there. His eyes were open, staring at the sun. He wasn't moving. "Is he dead?" Muller gasped. The medic checked Voss's pulse. "Weak, barely there." "Next." The medic moved on. Muller lay back in the dirt. He felt the paralysis creeping into his legs. He couldn't move his toes. This is what they felt. A thought drifted through his delirium. In the gas chambers, this is what they felt. Fear. Total helpless fear. 12 p.m. The investigation. General Clay, the military governor, arrived by jeep. He was furious. "How does a bakery poison 2,000 men under our noses?" he roared at Major Thompson. "We found the bread, sir," Thompson said. He held up a loaf wrapped in a plastic bag. "We sent it to the lab. The bottom crust is painted with pure arsenic. Enough to kill a horse per slice." "Who delivered it?" "The morning shift. We went to the bakery. It's empty. The manager, Schimmel, is claiming ignorance. But we found a German boy tied up in the loft. He says 3 Poles did it. Janek, Liebk, and Heim. Poles? Clay spat. Jews. Likely, sir. Avengers." Clay looked out at the field of groaning men. This was a PR nightmare. The Americans were supposed to be restoring order, conducting fair trials at Nuremberg. And now, vigilantes were executing prisoners on their watch. "Find them," Clay ordered. "Close the borders. Check the trains. I want those bakers found before the press hears about this." The train to Munich lurched into motion. Marek sat by the window. The compartment was crowded. A farmer with a chicken crate sat opposite him. The train gathered speed, leaving the smoking ruins of Nuremberg behind. Marek looked at his reflection in the glass. He looked the same. 2 eyes, a nose, a mouth. But he wasn't the same. He had killed. Not in battle. Not in self-defense. He had killed in cold blood. He had become the thing he hated to destroy the thing he hated. He put his hand in his pocket. He felt the empty space where the fake ID used to be. He had flushed it down the station toilet. Yannick the baker was dead. Marek the survivor was all that was left. The farmer offered him an apple. "Here, son," the farmer said. "You look pale. Eat." Marek took the apple. He stared at it. It was red, shiny, wholesome. He took a bite. Tasted sweet. He chewed, and for the first time in years he didn't taste ash. He tasted life. Behind him, in the distance, the sirens were still wailing, singing the song of the Black Sunday. April 16, 1946. Paris, France. The café on Boulevard Saint-Germain smelled of roasted coffee and Gauloise. It was a world away from the ash and ruin of Nuremberg. Here, there were lovers walking hand in hand, artists arguing about cubism, and waiters in crisp white aprons. Marek sat at a small round table in the corner. He was wearing a suit that was 2 sizes too big, bought from a charity shop with the last of his money. He was waiting. The door opened. Yitzhak walked in. He looked tired. He had shaved his beard, but his eyes still held the 1,000-yard stare of a partisan. He sat down opposite Marek. He didn't say hello. He placed a newspaper on the table. It was the International Herald Tribune. "Read," Yitzhak said. His voice was hollow. Marek looked at the headline. "Poison plot in Nuremberg camp. 2,283 SS officers poisoned." Marek felt a surge of triumph. His hands shook as he picked up the paper. 2,000, he whispered. "We did it. Yitzhak, we did it." "Read the subtitle," Yitzhak said. Marek looked down. "No fatalities reported. Prisoners recovering after mass sickness." Marek stopped breathing. The world tilted on its axis. The noise of the café, the clinking cups, the laughter, faded into a buzzing silence. "No fatalities." Marek choked out. "That's impossible. We used enough arsenic to kill an elephant per loaf." Haim calculated the dosage. "I painted it thick. I saw the sludge. Too thick," Yitzhak said bitterly. He signaled the waiter for a coffee. "We made a mistake, Marek. A cruel chemical joke." "What mistake?" "We used too much," Yitzhak explained, his voice dropping to a whisper. "The Americans say the dosage was so high that it triggered an immediate, violent emetic response. They threw it up before it could digest, before it could enter the bloodstream." Marek stared at the paper. He felt sick. "They threw it up? Like bad oysters," Yitzhak said. "They suffered. Oh, they suffered hell. Their linings are burned. Many will have kidney damage for life. But they are alive. They are sitting in their hospital beds, drinking milk, and laughing at us." Marek crumpled the newspaper in his fist. He had risked everything. He had choked a German boy unconscious. He had lived in the belly of the beast for months. For what? For a stomach ache? "We failed," Marek whispered. Tears of rage pricked his eyes. "We are not avengers. We are failures." Yitzhak reached across the table. He grabbed Marek's wrist. "We did not fail," Yitzhak said intensely. "They are alive." "Yes, they are alive," Yitzhak said. "But look at the rest of the paper. Look at the panic. The Americans are terrified. The Germans are terrified. For the first time since the war ended, they are not sleeping. They are checking their food. They are looking over their shoulders." Yitzhak leaned in closer. "We proved that we can touch them anywhere. In their beds. In their camps. In their bread. We didn't kill their bodies.
Marek.
We killed their peace of mind. We planted a ghost in Germany that will never leave." Marek looked at the crumpled paper. He thought of Muller and the other SS men writhing on the floor. "It's not enough," Marek said. "It never is," Yitzhak replied.
Come.
"The boat leaves for Haifa tomorrow. There is a new war coming. A war for a land where we don't have to hide in bakeries. 1948. The Negev Desert, Israel. Marek was holding a rifle again. But this time it wasn't a stolen German Mauser. It was a Czech firearm, and he was wearing the uniform of the Pelmuk. The sun was blinding. They were digging trenches, preparing for the Egyptian advance.
Hey, Marek.
It was Haim, the chemist. He was shirtless, sweating, digging a foxhole nearby. You want some bread? Haim joked, tossing a dry pita toward him. Marek caught it. He smiled grimly. It was an old joke between them now. The dark joke. Only if you didn't bake it, Marek said. They sat in the shade of a tank track, eating the dry bread and drinking warm water. Do you ever think about him? Haim asked suddenly. Who? The boy.
Hans.
In the bakery. Marek stopped chewing. He looked out at the shimmering heat of the desert. He remembered the feeling of the boy's struggle, the way his eyes had rolled back. Every day, Marek said. We left him alive, Haim said. The Americans found him. He told them everything. That's how they knew it was us. Good, Marek said. I'm glad he's alive. Why? He was a witness. Because he knows, Marek said. He knows that we could have killed him, but we didn't. We left him tied up, but breathing. We went for the SS, not the baker's apprentice. There is a difference, Haim. Even in the dark, there is a difference. A whistle blew. Positions, the commander shouted. Egyptian tanks on the ridge. Marek grabbed his rifle. He stood up. He wasn't Janek the Polish slave anymore. He wasn't the poisoner of Nuremberg. He was a soldier defending his own home. He checked the bolt. Let them come, Marek whispered.
1995, Tel Aviv.
Marek was 72 years old. He sat on a bench on Rothschild Boulevard, feeding pigeons. The city was bustling. Children ran past him, shouting in Hebrew. Skyscrapers gleamed in the sun. It was a miracle, a noisy, chaotic, beautiful miracle. A tour bus pulled up. A group of elderly tourists got out. They were speaking German.
Marek stiffened.
Old habits die hard. His hand tightened on his cane. He watched them. They were old men about his age. Some walked with limps. Some looked frail. One man separated from the group. He sat on the other end of Marek's bench to rest his legs. He was breathing heavily. Marek looked at him. The man had a scar on his chin. He looked like a grandfather. He wore a hearing aid. The man noticed Marek watching him. He smiled politely. It is hot today, the man said in English with a heavy German accent. Yes, Marek said in English. Very hot. I have not been here before, the German said, looking at the Bauhaus buildings. It is impressive, what you have built from the sand. We had to, Marek said. We had nowhere else to go. The German nodded. He rubbed his stomach absent-mindedly. He took a small pill bottle from his pocket and swallowed a tablet. Indigestion, Marek asked. The question slipped out before he could stop it. The German grimaced. Kidneys and stomach ulcers. An old souvenir. From the war.
Marek froze.
He looked at the man closer. He tried to peel back 50 years of wrinkles. Was this Muller? Was this Voss? Was this one of the men who had eaten the bread on that Black Sunday? I was a prisoner, the German said, his eyes clouding over. In Nuremberg, the Americans, they had a bakery. The air between them seemed to vibrate. The noise of the traffic faded. Marek looked at the man's hands. They were shaking slightly. I heard about that, Marek said softly. The bread. Yes, the German said. He looked at Marek. Really looked at him. He saw the number tattooed on Marek's forearm. Faint now, buried under age spots, but visible. The German's face paled. He realized who he was sitting next to. Not the specific man,